The scene is familiar in the movies. A gangster walks into a store, addresses the owner, and says, "Nice little place you have here. Be a shame if anything ever happened to it." The extortion is clear. Eric Fish is legislative counsel for the Uniform Law Commission. Mr. Fish wrote an article about the UFSA implementation process that we're experiencing today. He details the means for getting states to comply. He calls it cooperative federalism. In it, he says Congress can condition the receipt of federal funding on state adoption of certain laws. He cautions, the conditional spending approach is successful only if the funds under condition are important enough to force modification of a state's law. He continues, use of a financial incentive that is both significant and related to important state programming pacifies the calls within a state to interpose on the federal objective through an expression of state sovereignty. Mr. Speaker, how condescending for the federal government or the Uniform Law Commission to cavalierly dismiss Idaho's or any state sovereignty. By holding us hostage with our own tax dollars, they give us the quote-unquote choice to comply, and they call that state sovereignty. What a perversion of the concept. Giving someone a choice with a gun to their head does not respect their sovereignty. And the feds mean business. We saw it on display in April and in the weeks leading up to this session. If Idaho doesn't adopt the new UFSA standards, it will lose $16 million in child support enforcement assistance from the federal government. That is the feds' idea of respecting Idaho sovereignty. Do what we say or lose the money and enjoy your freedom. Permission to reference earlier legislation.
Without objection. The gentleman may reference what other legislation?
Senate Bill 1067.
Yeah.
Senate Bill
1067's open season.
Thank you. Senate Bill 1067 tabled a month ago, and now the revised and amended version before us today, House Bill 1, both have flaws. Both bills have problems regarding due process concerns of Idaho citizens and also data and privacy security. The amendments added to this bill, but disallowed in the April bill, are meant to address those concerns. However, Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution says otherwise. Specifically, it states that treaties involving the U.S. become the supreme law of the land. So even these new amendments become inferior and meaningless once the treaty is ratified. Whatever protections we believe the amendments provide are fleeting at best and in all likelihood are entirely non-existent. This leaves the great uncertainty as to whether Idahoans' rights and privacy will be protected or possibly compromised after adopting these UFSA updates. As is normal in this Capitol, when a bill of this importance has uncertain consequences, we add a sunset clause. As we all know, a sunset clause would require legislative review and renewal by a date certain, otherwise the statute expires. That seems appropriate here. However, the supremacy of the treaty once again calls into question whether a sunset clause would be allowed or even effective. The proposed sunset clause was defeated in committee, and now it is an all-or-nothing proposition before us. We are in a pickle. Do we adopt a risky and potentially damaging bill, or do we reject the bill and bear the consequences? And we know the consequences. They are well-publicized, gangster-esque fear-mongering. Idaho will lose federal funding for child support enforcement, $16 million. When the House committee held its ground in April, these gangster-like threats escalated. We will lose welfare funding, including Head Start, $30 million. We will lose child support enforcement tools from the federal government and jeopardize over $200 million of child support enforcement collections. Child support enforcement will be at risk for 155,000 Idaho kids, affecting over 400,000 Idahoans. The list started small and grew and grew and grew. In this morning's committee meeting, most or nearly all testimony in favor of the bill was really about the threats and not about the bill itself. It was all about whether or not we lose tools or lose funding. Of course, we all know and accept that federal funding comes with strings. But as Supreme Court decisions have held in New York versus U.S. 1992 and the National Federation of Independent Businesses versus Sebelius, the feds are not allowed to continually add more strings while threatening to take away already existing funding. The Supreme Court says that these federal extortion threats are illegal. We should be voting on the merits of the bill and not vote based on threats of federal reprisal. This bill, HB 1, is important. Child support enforcement is important. We can, and we should, and we do have international agreements to facilitate both Idaho's collections of foreign child support enforcement orders and other states and countries' enforcement of Idaho's orders. Child support enforcement is a proper and a legitimate role of government, but we need to do it the right way with proper protections and free of government gangster-style coercion. What we do today is important for another reason. If Idaho bends and breaks to what the Uniform Law Commission Council called cooperative federalism, or what a gangster calls friendly advice, we should only expect more of it in the future. Is $16 million the price for Idaho from now on? Just as the gangster cares not at all about the well-being of the store or its owner, the actions of Health and Human Services and our own Department of Health and Welfare show they care not at all about the well-being of Idaho's children or the state's sovereignty. If we don't stop these ugly tactics now, we will certainly see it again and again. Remember what the White House and Department of Education threatened when one little school district in Idaho decided not to give the SBAC test. We see it now. Nice little child support enforcement system you have there, Idaho. Nice little kids on child support you have there, Idaho. Nice little Head Start program you have there, Idaho. Nice little state you have there, Idaho. It'd sure be a shame if anything ever happened to it. I don't think so, not this time, and not next time either. Join me in standing up to the federal extortion. Let them come to us in the true spirit of cooperation. Let them sweeten the deal, not escalate threats. Let them come in the true spirit of cooperation, and then we might be willing to compromise and give and take, and in the end, reach an acceptable agreement that works for them and for us. Let's do the right thing for Idaho children. Idaho can and will take care of its children. Let's also do the right thing for Idaho's future. Mr. Speaker, good ladies and gentlemen of the Idaho House of Representatives, please push the no button on cooperative federalism, also known as gangster-style coercion. Federalism, if true, is cooperative and consensual. Thank you.